Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 46. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. The 2025 NFL trade deadline is officially in the books. The Pittsburgh Steelers standing pat, not making any moves on a really busy day for the NFL at large. So plenty to talk about. The Steelers' lack of action on deadline day. What does it mean? Right move, wrong move, roster moves, injuries, Mike Tomlin's press conference, and getting an eye towards the Chargers on Sunday night. Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Wednesday. Nothing really happened. Back to you, Alex.
All right, I'll pick up the mantle. So give me your quick reaction. We'll kind of do this like our 30,000-foot view on Mondays. Pittsburgh not making any moves. They were so connected to a wide receiver. You and I both predicted they would buck the media attention and belief that they would trade for a receiver and would hold firm. Now, what was their interest level? They apparently were very much in on Jakobi Meyers. He goes to Jacksonville. Rashid Shaheed goes to Seattle. Those were the two receivers that were dealt yesterday. Pittsburgh, same group as before. Right move, wrong move. What's your initial reaction?
All right. First and foremost, as far as the overall trade, deadline day went, fairly exciting to watch. As a spectator, I thought overall, several guys that obviously people thought might move were moved. The Jets, I was a little bit surprised to see Sauce Gardner go, and specifically for what he went for. I don't think a lot of people had the Colts going that direction. I don't think a lot of people maybe thought Sauce would get traded either, but he did. The Jets obviously sold off. You kind of wondered would they even trade off a few more pieces, such as Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. That obviously didn't happen. To read some of the reports coming out of some of the beat reporters, specifically when it came to Garrett Wilson, it seemed like it would have taken a lot to pry him away from the Jets. So not shocked. I was a bit surprised that they didn't move Breece Hall. But in the grand scheme of things, the Jets were obviously big players. The Cowboys, even coming off of their loss against the Cardinals the other night, ended up trying to make some significant moves. We'll see how that plays out for them. Not a lot of wide receivers on the move on this final day. Myers, obviously, the Saints wide receiver, Rashid, how do you pronounce his last name?
Shaheed.
Shaheed obviously moved. Those were two guys that there was a lot of speculation that they would. So as far as what all happened, it was an exciting day. Quinnen Williams obviously being moved by the Jets was interesting as well, going to Dallas. As far as the Steelers not solidifying any moves, I don't think there was obviously the report that they were in on Jakobi Meyers. I think that was to be expected. They obviously did not want to give up the kind of draft capital that the Jaguars ended up giving to get him. Now, how serious of players were the Steelers in that? Were they close to that level? Could the Steelers have maybe bettered the offer or equaled the offer? The obvious answer is yes. But when you do look at what seems to have been the narrative moving on into the 2026 draft about trying to hold on to as much draft capital as they possibly could, it's not a shock overall that they didn't get him. And once again, you can talk about Waddle, you can talk about Garrett Wilson, you can talk about several Olave, a lot of these guys that did not get moved, and could they have potentially have been moved at the prices right? I think the price was probably not met, whoever the team was. And that's a Captain Obvious statement there. But one other wide receiver that did get moved was A.D. Mitchell, being part of that trade with the Jets. So that seemed kind of like a throw in with them. I didn't expect the Steelers to be players when it comes to him. But we had talked about it. The Steelers did make a trade deadline move. More than likely, it would have been for a wide receiver, and our hope was that if they did make a move, it would have been a notable number 2 move, someone for like, for example, for a Waddle. For Jacoby Myers. But was I was I shocked that the Steelers didn't make a move? No, I think your gut, you get caught up with this and thinking, oh, I want my team to make a move too.
Mhm.
And obviously, you know, there was all this speculation and buzz. The Steelers were going to be aggressive, and look, there's so many quote unquote insiders out there. You don't know how much of that's fluff. Now look, you can rewind back to Mike Tomlin's press conference on Tuesday and that kind of smile he had on his face and saying, I like shopping. And coming out of that press conference, it was easy to have the feel as a fan that they're cooking up something. And you have to think that they've got a good chance of landing something. But that shopping ended up being more. It feels like window shopping is the buzzword overall right now. Um, you just can't press a button and make moves happen. And I think this just boils down to that the few players maybe that the Steelers did look to potentially deal for, the cost in their eyes was too high, and specifically when it came to 2026 draft capital. So our guts ended up being right on this. They did not make a move, and we'll see how it plays out for this team. And look, your sense is that a lot of the fan base is disappointed,
Mhm.
and I think this is primarily due to all the buzz, and some of maybe the comments that Mike Tomlin made yesterday during his press conference. So I get that, but largely I'm not surprised, Alex.
I understand the feeling of being let down because there was such a groundswell of they're going to do something, they're going to make a move. James Palmer yesterday, as you alluded to, saying Pittsburgh's aggressive and a deal didn't happen. I do wonder, had Travis Hunter not gotten hurt in practice last week, did the Jaguars pursue Jacoby Myers? And if not, does Pittsburgh land him instead? We'll never know, obviously. But I'm okay with Pittsburgh not making a move. I get the sentiment of go buy, go be aggressive, had that shiny new piece. But I like the roster Pittsburgh's collected. They've shown when they play well, they can win. They've beaten the top 2 seeds in the AFC this season, and the Patriots and the Colts. The offense is working well. It's spreading the ball around. Hold on the capital next year. Get some youth infusion into this roster. Wrote the article this morning that explains all my thoughts on why I think holding pat and holding serve is the right move here. So you guys can go check that out. But I'm okay with Pittsburgh doing nothing.
I wouldn't necessarily say. uh, I'm okay for the fact that the guys that you thought maybe look. This goes back to my thoughts on, and your thoughts too. If they're going to make a move, get somebody impactful at wide receiver.
But was
Jacoby,
that guy really even available? Myers was
right?
close, but how much does that put you over the top?
No. And here's the other part of that. And it goes back to the way we've seen this offense run this year. How much would a guy like Jacoby Myers have helped you in the grand scheme of the remaining games based on the way this offense is run this year? Look, Aaron Rodgers is right at the top of the league or bottom of the league in snap to throw times. He's right there last in the league in intended air yard distance. He's last in the league in intended complete or in completed air yard distance. The offense, none of that in my opinion, was going to change dramatically by merely adding a guy like Shaheed or Jacoby Myers. So could those guys have made some big catches maybe for you on third down, got you a little bit more yak in certain situations? Yes, but do I think that adding either one of those guys would have been a huge needle mover, especially when it comes to things like explosive plays and pushing the football down the field? My answer would be no.
Same. The needle movers were the Chris Olaves of the world, the Jalen Waddles of the world, the Garrett Wilsons of the world. And I think Wilson was completely off limits unless you completely bowled over the Jets with an offer, which would require for Waddle, for Wilson, maybe even Olave, a first round pick, some really high draft capital. And for a team with an uncertain quarterback situation for 2026 and beyond, you can't give up a first round pick for a wide receiver. It's just a non starter. So the true needle movers, Pittsburgh, I don't believe was in the position to go pursue, and obviously did not.
Right. Now, if you want to look at a guy, adding a guy maybe like Jacoby Myers as maybe that would take a little bit attention off of your other primary receiver in DK Metcalf. Yeah, I can potentially buy into that. Maybe it helps a little bit with some of the coverages that you see specifically when it comes to DK Metcalf, and maybe having a quality wide receiver, up in the quality of Myers, maybe potentially over Austin or something like that, maybe get you an extra, third down. But I just think in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it would have significantly reshaped the offense or the overall kind of production and really the schematics and time to throw and those kind of things there. So, and once again, we can talk all day about guys that did not get dealt like Waddle and Olave and Garrett Wilson and all, but what would what you would have had to given up to get those guys been worth it overall? And I don't think the answer was yes there.
Same. I'm with you there. So Pittsburgh will dance with who they brought to this point. They, of course, did add officially on Wednesday Marquez Valdez-Scantling to the practice squad. So that's your receiver help. And only other way to add from here on out is through free agency or the waiver process. As you noted yesterday, post-trade deadline, all players released from here on out are subject to waivers, vested veterans or not. So we'll see if Pittsburgh were to add late in the season. They did make some practice squad moves yesterday. So can I interest you in some practice squad shuffling, bringing in two players? And former linebacker Mark Robinson, drafted by the team, was cut this summer, went to New England, has now come back to Pittsburgh, wearing now number 57 to the practice squad. Mark Robinson also signing cornerback Daquan Hardy, a local kid from my neck of the woods out here in Penn Hills, went to Penn State, was in Buffalo, and is now in Pittsburgh to replace Beanie Bishop, both in position as undersized slot cornerbacks and a number, wearing number 31. Pittsburgh releasing, and this one hurts me, Dave, John Rice Plumlee and edge rusher KJ Henry. Plumlee signed last week, Henry a couple of weeks ago. So that's the only roster moves of note yesterday, Dave.
Yeah, welcome back, Mark Robinson. So you got a guy to kind of help you in depth there, and if you needed somebody for special teams or whatnot, you could obviously elevate him. So yeah, just some of your weekly kind of moves because you never know how short the lines are going to be at certain positions and all like that. So interesting to see Mark Robinson circle back around, and we'll see how long a couple of those guys stay there.
And Robinson's inclusion may be because Cole Holcomb currently remains out with an illness. Mike Tomlin holding that Tuesday press conference you referenced a couple minutes ago, giving an injury report, and was a little vague on some of the statuses for these guys. He initially said, Scotty Miller, Cole Holcomb are out. That means they're currently working their way back. Did not rule them out 100% for the Chargers game. Says we'll see where practice takes them. So Miller with the finger injury that we assume was broken, and then surgically repaired. Holcomb with the illness. Jabril Peppers didn't really give an update on the status of his quad injury. Chuck Clark should be coming.
He called that soft tissue, didn't he?
Yeah, but on the injury report last week, they listed it as quad, so I assume that's what it is. Clark should be back from the illness that caused him to miss the Colts game. And then on Isaac Seumalo said he's nursing the pec injury like he was managing at the early portions of last week. He was able to function for us. So don't know exactly his status in terms of will he play, but Tomlin did not seem to indicate this was a serious injury or some sort of tear that would have him out for a long time. So that is good news. Pittsburgh will release its first injury report later today, and we'll get a lay of the land with that.
I tell you, though, it is a bit concerning that that's a couple of games in a row that Isaac Seumalo unable to finish, So,
Sure.
we'll, we went it. I think at the top of last week, we were, or at least I was in the camp of, "Man, I'm not so sure he's going to play." And we had to talk about, does Andres Pete get a helmet, or does the new offensive lineman on the practice squad get elevated and all? Well, turned out Seumalo started and played, and they was able to run some jumbo. The most concerning thing is that if this continues to be a trend, then you have to have Spencer Anderson go in there and play left guard, and then does that take away from your jumbo package and some of the successes that you had in that? So once again, I think we're back to where we were, specifically with Seumalo last week. Is he going to be able to rebound enough, and is he going to be able to make it, through a full game for the first time in 3 games at left guard?
Right. We'll have to wait and see. If he can't play, Spencer Anderson will get the start. And as you said, becomes the question who becomes that 6th offensive lineman. If anyone, we'll maybe have some clarity by Friday. All right, let's talk about the Mike Tomlin press conference. A lot of the headlines are now kind of moot. As you said, he made the quips about likes to go shopping and potentially open for business, all that kind of stuff. Nothing materialized there. So what else were kind of the headlines from Tomlin yesterday?
Jalen Ramsey and what's at least in store for him in the immediate future.
Yeah, he's going to stay at safety. He's not going to move, and that's probably the right call with Deshaun Elliott, of course, still out, and the pairing of Ramsey and Duggar working well last week. Ramsey had a good game. Duggar impressed. Tomlin really talked about his comfort level, and they were monitoring him throughout the game, and Duggar looked like he knew what to do and was fluid, and that was kind of the sign that told Mike Tomlin this thing's going to be good to go. So Ramsey and Duggar should still be your safeties this week, we assume. Where that goes down the road, we'll see, but status quo, which is the right decision coming off a really good defensive performance versus the high-powered Colts.
Yeah, and he was asked about Duggar and going into the game if he was thinking Duggar would play all but one snap. He says, I was hopeful that he could play a lot, but certainly we had direct eyes on him in case it wasn't unfolding in the ways that we would like. We were just getting to know him. We certainly respect the fact that he's a veteran player and certainly displayed signs that he was capable in our practice sessions leading up to Sunday, but stadiums are somewhat different. So we had a plan, but we were certainly light on our feet that if something wasn't moving and moving in the right direction. So obviously they liked what they saw out of him as the game progressed. They liked how they utilized the 2 deep safeties most of the game. I didn't think Duggar didn't severely impact the game, but he also didn't hurt this team either. And he seemed to get more comfortable as the game went on. And I thought Jalen Ramsey for the most part played well in the deep safety role. And I thought the other cornerbacks for the most part, Sands, Joey Porter Jr., a couple of penalties there. You got beat on a post will route in the first half of the game there. Some of the some of the second level stuff in the middle of the field, I think in the second half, but top to bottom, this defense, as far as the coverage aspect and really against the run as well too, played really well. I thought the front really played a good game. This was one of the better games that Keanu Benton, I think, has played since he's entered the NFL. I thought the blitzing, although decreased overall on the dropbacks, I thought for the most part when they did blitz, that ended up being worked out favorable in their parts. And we asked the question coming out of the game on Monday is Will they attempt to fix something that didn't seem broken on Sunday against the Colts? And the short answer is no, they will not fix that.
And sometimes the best thing you can do as a player, referring to Duggar, to help your team is to not hurt your team. And that's what Duggar did. He didn't make mistakes. Things seemed to be clean. He did his assignment. And that's all you really were asking for a guy that had 2.5 practices, a walkthrough, and 2 full sessions going against the Colts. So really happy with his performance overall. And really a no-brainer to keep Ramsey. He looks natural at safety. And even just the threat of his physicality over the middle could have some of those receivers in future weeks have some of those alligator arms and hear footsteps. I mean, Ramsey was physical. Michael Pittman took a beating from him in this game. And then another kind of element about Ramsey's play, but also I think helped Pittsburgh match him up on tight ends. I didn't realize it until I watched the All-22, up close and personal, that on a lot of third downs, it was Ramsey on Tyler Warren, playing man coverage, single high looks, and Ramsey took away Warren in those moments. If he's at cornerback, you could have matched him up still, obviously, but it might be harder to do. If Warren has different alignments, or it might be more obvious that Warren's going to be on Ramsey in some of those moments. So I think there's a lot of benefits there when you play, say, Baltimore later this year, should Ramsey still be at safety to face a Mark Andrews on third down, a guy that's given you fits in the past. So I think a lot of advantages there from Ramsey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just think, and we'll get into this in the All-22 and the coverages and all like that, but it went well, and they were able to stop the run, not having to stack the box a ton in this game, and in the instances that the Colts did start finding a little bit of traction with their running game. You had some big plays that came along that either ended in sacks or sack fumbles or interceptions there. So yeah, I'm interested to see this moving forward with Ramsey and Duggar. I think that's the right call to make there, and Mike Tomlin has to be pleased overall with what he saw on tape.
When it comes to wide receivers on the team, Mike Tomlin making some comments downplaying the Valdez-Scantling signing, said this is not Duggar 2.0. He's a practice squatter. We'll get him in the building. We'll see what things look like and go from there. Said Aaron Rodgers had no influence on signing Valdez-Scantling. I'm not so sure if I believe that, Dave. Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down there. Yeah, denial is not just a river in Egypt, I think, but I mean, maybe the interpretation is Rodgers did not come to the front office and say, go sign this guy.
Right.
But obviously the relationship there, and Valdez-Scantling, when he signed with San Francisco to begin this year when Pittsburgh pursued him, said Rodgers was pitching Valdez-Scantling to reunite with him in Pittsburgh. So it certainly doesn't hurt. But, practice squad, we'll see what kind of impact he has. It may be where he has no impact. Trying to find a role on this team as a backup receiver, not easy to do. And of course, he's not even on the 53-man roster right now. But that is an upgrade. It is an addition. It is somebody that can still play and has that history with Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see where it takes the team.
Was Aaron Rodgers knocking on Tomlin and Khan's door every 5 minutes saying, did you sign him yet? Did you sign him yet? But I mean, it goes without saying, those two have a relationship together. And I'm sure there was conversations with Aaron. Hey, what, tell us a little bit about MVS and how you think he could potentially be utilized if he gets to a point where we need to utilize him. So the familiarity aspect of that played a part in it. Did Aaron Rodgers end up playing a big, huge part in kind of demanding this or suggesting this? Probably no, but it didn't hurt the relationship and the time that those two have played together.
One other reason why Pittsburgh may not have been as aggressive in adding a receiver as some people thought they would or should be was because they're happy with the group. Tomlin was asked about Roman Wilson, and he called the fumble that he had boneheaded, which it absolutely was, but in the same breath talked about his progression and ascension and getting better each week. And so there may be some confidence in Wilson and also Calvin Austin, back healthy from injury, making plays, leading receiver for Pittsburgh in that Colts game, to say, we like the group that we have. We don't have to go add somebody that's going to take away snaps from Wilson, from Calvin Austin.
Look, one bad apple don't spoil the whole bunch, girl. And what I mean by that is one bonehead play shouldn't totally change an entire opinion about the guy. It didn't end up killing you. It ended up being a learning aspect for Roman Wilson. Look, if he just gets down, we're not. I mean, it's a great play by Roman Wilson. Made the catch, got the yards necessary. Sometimes you can try to do too much in certain situations when that too much is not needed, and I think he learned that from that aspect. Now, he got a little bit of a public chiding, if you will, from Mike Tomlin, but in the same breath, he says, we have not lost confidence in this guy.
Right. I think it's the right tone to strike. It was a bad play. Hold him accountable for it. A teaching moment, obviously, just the situation. And in general, receivers should not be hurdling. Wilson did that a couple weeks ago. It's fun. I know it looks good whenever it kind of works, but you just have so many bad outcomes in those moments, especially in the middle of the field. Maybe along the sidelines when guys hurdle. We've seen Darnell Washington do it. Najee Harris, was great with the triangle button, but it's just in a situation like that, only bad things can happen. There's really no gain from hurdling in that moment. Pick up the first down, move the sticks, and that's all that was really needed in that particular moment. So a situational moment, if anything, for Roman Wilson to learn and grow from.
Exactly right. Just an awareness thing of what's needed, the time of game, if you needed 2 more yards or 3 more yards in that situation and you're behind and it's a gotta have it type moment, you could understand trying to make that extra effort and all like that, but it just comes down to awareness. And thankfully it's another learning moment for him in his young career, and hopefully he can move on from it.
All right, what else from Mike Tomlin? That was kind of the bulk of it. Talked about Peyton Wilson, another second-year guy like Roman Wilson, ascending, getting better, playing good football, and Tomlin says that's reasonable to expect, especially for somebody like Wilson and Peyton, unlike Roman Wilson, who played last year and could grow and has a lot of snaps under his belt, obviously playing, I would say, the best game of his career against the Colts.
Yeah, look, and it really was. He was all over the field in that. He did have that missed tackle over there on the defense's right side. Uh, uh, that ended up in some extra yardage. I mean, but top to bottom, I thought he disguised that blitz very well when he came off the end, and obviously got good elevation and batted that ball back towards Jack Sawyer in that situation. But for the most part, he seemed to get off his blocks well. He seemed to be all of them seemed to be gap sound overall. I thought Patrick Queen played a really good game overall. I thought all the linebackers did, quite honestly, outside and inside guys there. So yeah, I thought it was a very good game by Patrick Wilson. I mean, Peyton Wilson. I think he continues to make strides. One of the early, as I mentioned the other day, one of those completions to Alec Pierce early in the game where he got free. Peyton Wilson ran that one down from behind as well too. So he runs after the play, gives you a lot of effort. He plays on special teams and makes plays on special teams. Obviously, the special teams captain right now as well too. So the arrow is definitely, and we had the conversation a couple of weeks ago about the arrow not pointing so much in a positive direction for Peyton Wilson, but I think it's back moving in the other positive direction for him. Most notably coming out of this game against the Colts.
And that was a really good point by you. I kind of forgotten about it until I watched back the film and then remembered your comment from the Monday show, that early tackle on Pierce. That saved a touchdown. That should be a touchdown for Alec Pierce. Now, the Colts still scored on that drive on that 4th and goal, the opening possession, but you don't know that in the moment. So that's twice this year, at least, that Wilson has had the open grass hustle play touchdown, hawking down a receiver to save clear 6 points. The Addison play in Dublin and then against the Colts on Sunday. So his effort is infectious, his athleticism is obvious, and he's making some of those plays that others either couldn't or wouldn't go out there and do.
Yeah, keep blades of grass to defend, as they like to say, and he's done that more than a few times this year.
Definitely. All right, anything else from Tom? That kind of was the bulk, I think, of the presser.
He dang sure didn't wasn't open to talking about Beanie Bishop and the decision that went on with him. He says, I'm not getting into practice squad decisions. That's just too far down the totem pole. I'm more interested in what we need to do this week and the guys that are on the 53 we're preparing to play. Look, is there, if Beanie stays unsigned, is there a possibility that he circles back to the practice squad, much in the way Mark Robinson did? Yeah, I mean, there's always a chance that. I don't blame him for not getting too deep into why a practice squad second year former undrafted cornerback. Now, look, was it a bit surprising? Did I expect to see Beanie Bishop's name on the transaction wire as a practice squad player being cut this week? No, but it, what Tom was essentially saying is, can't we find something better to talk about than cutting a practice squad cornerback?
Yeah, it's true. They talk about why players are ever released in the first place or why they are subtracted. If they do, they talk about it in pretty coach speak answers. So no surprise there that Tomlin was not going to give any sort of commentary, any sort of color on a practice squatter. Worthwhile question to ask, but I didn't expect anything else from Tomlin in that moment. Could he come back? We'll see. But signing Daquan Hardy kind of tells me this team was ready to swap him out. Why that is, we'll never know. But that was the calculation.
And to wrap the press conference up, he was asked, Mike Tomlin was asked, what do you guys have to do to be cleaner in the run game? He says, sometimes you got to tip your cap to your opponent. I think that's the first place you start. I thought Indy did an awesome job. I thought particularly that the veteran front of Buckner and Grover Stewart are a problem. We knew that going in. We talked about that in here a week ago. They confirmed that. It minimized our start, to be quite honest with you. Thankfully, able to catch fire and move on from there. Probably just like to compliment those guys, he says. As I mentioned, when you got veteran guys that have been together like those two, coupled with a guy like Franklin, who has grown up in that system and the safety tandem, as well as Nick Frost in his fourth year drafted, Kenny Moore, blah, 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 nickel spot. When you got people down the middle of that defense, like with that level of not only individual experience, but collective experience, they are going to be some challenges. So he pretty much put it on. It's on. Kudos to them. And because of that, look, the run game, if there was a concerning thing coming out of this game, it was why the run game couldn't really get much traction in this. Now, they did have a couple of plays, specifically with Falatano pulling and some of those dart scheme pulls that looked good, locked up fairly well. But other than that, there wasn't a lot to be excited about from a run game component. And if this team's going to be able to start moving the football more effectively on longer fields, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a little bit, and get more explosive plays, whether it be 20-yard pass plays down the field or 10 plus yard run games, that we got to start seeing this run game going back in the other direction. And it obviously didn't against the Colts. I don't know if it's good enough just to say they have good players on that side of the ball, because you go around the NFL and there's a lot of good players on a lot of defenses around the NFL, except maybe the Cincinnati Bengals.
And now New York Jets, who have depleted their defense of all their cornerstone pieces. I think the Ravens play the Bengals and Jets in back-to-back games, so they're going to score 1 billion points in that game. Yeah, I mean, the Steelers' run game has been good overall this season. It had been ascending, good in the last 2 games against the Bengals and the Packers, which had a really good run defense. This was not a good outing, but these are blips. Hopefully, I'll take it as such right now. We'll see how it looks against the Chargers. It must be better against the Chargers. Otherwise, your concern level will start to grow. But I kind of agree. I thought the Colts just had a good plan. They got a good front. Stewart and Buckner are great duo in the middle. I didn't see anything that was so sloppy or obviously bad that I saw earlier in the season. It just felt like the Colts were a bit stronger and made a big effort to stop the run. So I'm not too terribly alarmed by it, at least not yet.
Yeah, I'll give a mulligan for this one here in that, but we can't be every week accepting, well, they've got good players on defense is the reason we weren't able to run the football.
Sure, of course not, but I can give a little more grace because I've seen this team run the ball well. I've seen this offensive line grow, and so those things, the bigger picture, the broader strokes tell me that this is more blip than it is going to be trend, but again, we'll keep watching going forward.
All right, let's see it Sunday night against the Chargers.
Amen to that. All right, Dave, let's get an all-22 from this Colts game. Where do you want to start here? Offense or defense? A lot to talk about on both sides of the football.
Let's start. We opened up talking a lot about the defense the other day, and we're probably going to spend more time on that in this breakdown today, going deeper into the all-22. So with that, let's start on the offense. And there there were moments in the passing game. Obviously, I thought the throw by Rodgers to Freiermuth was one of the better throws he made, obviously in that game and potentially maybe of the season. That's a gotta have it moment. You got to punch the ball in the end zone after the turnaround and the field position and all like that. And if there's one thing that we've learned about Aaron Rodgers in his time with the Steelers is he's good at getting passing touchdowns, either inside the red zone or just outside of the red zone. So I thought that was a key moment in this game, as was the play to Calvin Austin over the middle of the field. Now look, once again, Aaron Rodgers, and I think this backs up kind of what you said the other day. Aaron Rodgers averaged, and that I noted immediately, averaged a time to throw of 2.14 seconds in the win over the Colts, the fastest by any quarterback in a game since week 15 of the 2023 season. That was Tua Tagovailoa with 2.0 seconds. And Rodgers fastest in any of his games in the next gen stats era since 2016. Isn't that something that you threw out there the other day, I think, or pretty damn close to it? So it was evident that, more than evident, not that it hasn't been evident going into this game, Aaron Rodgers got the ball out quick in this game. 2.14 seconds is lightning quick. Now, he completed 14 or 23 quick passes in the game for 128 yards and a touchdown, thanks in large part to getting the ball out quick. Rodgers was pressured on just 10. All of this comes from Next Gen Stats, by the way. Just 10.3% of his dropbacks, his second lowest since Next Gen started tracking pressures in 2018. He attempted just one pass under pressure against the Colts, completing it for no gain. From a clean pocket, Rodgers went 24 for 34 for 203 yards and a touchdown. So there was no deep passing game, so to speak, for the Steelers in this game. In the times that Aaron Rodgers ended up holding the football, things did not go overly well for the offense. So, and then when you couple that with the running game was having a lot of problems getting any sort of positive plays, and I think we talked about, what was there? Was there no runs of 10 yards or more, or just one? There wasn't a lot there in the running game. So now there's an argument going around. Ben Roethlisberger talked about it yesterday on his podcast in kind of an overarching view. Can this Steelers team as a whole continue to win ball games in games that the defense does not get the turnovers? I think that is a fair question to ask, but then this goes back to when, some of the things that you said. The Steelers have a turnover culture, right? That and we've talked about, Mike Tomlin counts on this defense having these key sacks or these key takeaways in games. That's what he's relying this thing on. What happens if the Steelers get into a game where maybe they trade turnovers with the team 2-2 or only get a 2-0 turnover ratio? Can the offense start finding a little bit more traction than what they have shown up until this point overall? And I think that is a legitimate question. It obviously rolls back to what we talked about coming out of this Colts game. We've got to see this run game go back in a different direction. We've got to see this offense stay out of second and long and third and long situations, because it's just a recipe for things not to go well with Aaron Rodgers back there at quarterback. So overall, with the offense, I think they did a good job of getting the ball out quickly. Overall, I think the offensive line, for what they were asked to do with the time to throw in the ball out quickly, performed well. I thought the run blocking overall was okay. It's just there wasn't, once again, it goes back to the Colts and the pedigree and the quality of players that they had. I did worry, you do have to wonder, though, the complexion of the game, and you can't look at it this way, but you do have to wonder if the Steelers don't get the takeaways in that game, what's the complexion of the game for the Steelers specifically because of the offense play?
Yeah, but we don't do that with anything else. We don't say, well, if Aaron Rodgers didn't throw those touchdown passes,
Right.
how are they going to win? Like, we don't ever discount and try to remove some aspect of the game. We don't.
Points are points. Points produced by and look, you you work with what you're given with there, and that's why I go back to say one of the big positives with Aaron Rodgers running this offense is that when they do get on shorter fields, whether the defense has created it or the offense has had somewhat of a drive, is that they are punching it in more times than not. And what's the goal of this game? Score more points than your opponent does, and try to more times than not get 25 or more of those in games. And for the most part, they've been able to do that. But there is, I think what I'm asking for is I would like to see this offense be able to look less more fluid than what it has looked at times here. And then look, it goes back to explosive plays overall from this offense. And I posted a chart on the Twitter machine earlier today here. The Steelers, when you look at explosive plays, whether it be 20-yard passing plays or 10-plus-yard run plays, they obviously rank towards the bottom of the league. They only have 20-plus-yard passing plays, and they have 19 runs of 10 yards or longer. They have 39 total between those two on the season. That comes out to 5.6 quote unquote explosive plays per game, which puts them in the bottom quarter, the top of the bottom quarter of the NFL. I think we need to see a little more explosiveness out of this offense to feel a little bit more comfortable.
How do you balance that though? Because obviously, one benefit and one strength of this offense is it doesn't have a lot of negativity. The ball gets out quickly. You're getting yak. Rodgers is being protected by the offensive line that's improving, but also by his quick snap to throw times. What is that line to walk there?
Well, the line is you damn sure better keep yourself out of second and third and long situations.
Yeah, and they're doing that by some of the quick passing game, by a running game that I think by and large has. Though, can I say one more thing about the run game too? While obviously the numbers were poor, they didn't run really well. They punched it in twice down on the goal line. Jalen Warren's 2 rushing touchdowns.
Sure.
So situationally, they ran well in those tight situations where I'm sure the Colts expected the run or certainly were gearing up for the run. That's tough to do in tight quarters. The first one you had a power run with All with the front side guard pulling, Hayward in the backfield. The second one was a toss left, running behind Big Darnell Washington. I think Spencer Anderson or Skoranek as well. So you ran when you needed to finish some of these drives off, and that shouldn't be lost, even though it will get lost in some of the yards per carry and rushing yard totals.
Right. I'm not losing the aspect of that because I do think one of the bright spots about this offense is the ability to come away with touchdowns.
That's the biggest difference.
Right, and that's something we haven't talked about in a while, So, and I think obviously that's a benefit of having Aaron Rodgers at quarterback here. And look, when it's when the ball is at the 3-yard line, you can't get 10 yards on a run.
Right, exactly.
And not lost in the fact is the fact that when you need 1 yard on 3rd and 1, you get 1 yard. That is a fantastic play.
Yeah, and they were successful, I think, in short yardage. They had the 4th down push. I mean, I forget the number. I don't know where the number sits present day, but I know a couple weeks ago they were, I think, number 1 in the NFL in short yardage, and they were terrible there last season. So I still see situationally a lot of really positive signs, even if some of the rush yards per game and yards per carry may not be screaming, a bountiful amount of success.
And look, I mean, you'd look at the league leader right now in explosive plays per game average of either 20-yard passes or 10-yard runs. The Chicago Bears lead the league at 8.6, and the Steelers are 5.6. Now, am I expecting the Steeler offense in these remaining games to increase by 3 explosive plays per game? No. I think you're foolish to expect an offense at this time of season to increase like that. But can they Can they get another 1.5 or 2 a game? And how impactful would such things be if they were able to do that? I mean,
It would be
look,
impactful.
and look, it's not for the lack of potentially being there too. Sometimes you got to make the play. Look at the opening play to Jonnu Smith.
Yep.
You know,
That should have been an explosive play, just simply dropped. And sometimes, the 5-yard catch in the flat on first down is okay. But this team also needs more plays. They're now
sure.
31st in plays per game. They passed up Baltimore this past week, so they're not getting a volume, a good amount of plays. Now, more explosive plays. You had a 20-yard gain. You stay on schedule. You're moving the ball. That's going to help, obviously, but there just isn't a big volume of plays that they're working from relative to how many explosive plays per game that they're making. Just to go back, you mentioned it, Ben making the comment about how this team is too turnover dependent. What happens if they don't take the football away? I get the instinct of that thought, but again, it's like saying, what if Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw touchdown passes, or what if Josh Allen doesn't have a great game? Like, these are core parts of your team that you build around. This is intentional. This is a culture that Pittsburgh is building. The expectation is for Aaron Rodgers to throw touchdown passes, just as the expectation is for this defense to create takeaways, and by and large, it has done so pretty routinely for the last 5-6 seasons, like I said on Monday's show. So I bristle when I hear those comments from not just Ben, but a lot in the media, and a lot of fans are saying that too, because I don't think it's something you can just conveniently remove and just say, well, what if it doesn't happen? You could say that about anything, any strength of a team. This is part of how Pittsburgh operates, how they play defense and have been playing defense for a long time. The expectation is to take the ball away. No, not 6 times a game, but 1-2 times a game, win turnover battle. Pittsburgh does that better than basically any other team in the NFL.
Right. Now, when they do take the ball away, especially on short fields, you expect the offense to punch it in. And unfortunately, one of those early turnovers obviously came on special teams, and you come away with, not only do you not come away with a touchdown, you come away with 0 points. And those, because this team it has the culture of building around being that kind of defense, and relying and counting on that fact, you've got to have it on the opposite end from the offense.
Yes, but how many points off turnovers did Pittsburgh have in this game? Wasn't it, you see, like 24 or something?
Right.
It's pretty good. Now, granted, there were six turnovers, which gives you a lot of chances to get points off turnovers. But overall, I'm not too mad at 24 points off turnovers. They got a hit on that 4th down play. Washington has to get his head around. I think Rodgers should hit DK on that play. I think you're going to your number one guy. They're both running slants there. That's the matchup I'm going after over Darnell Washington. But it is a missed chance any way you slice it.
Yeah, and the jump ball to DK. What happens if you put that ball up higher?
Yeah, I think Rodgers could have been a bit better, but at least you did punch it in the next play on that 3rd and goal, and you found the end zone. So running in those tight, obvious run situations where I think this run game should get a little more credit for the job it did.
My takeaway is I want to see the run game go back in a more positive direction, and I would like to see another 1.5 explosive plays. I think that will help this offense tremendously by doing that.
Some thoughts I have going through the All-22. This offensive line I thought played well, especially in pass pro. Now, as your numbers show, the ball got out really quickly. Ton of swing passes to Gainwell, some RPOs in this one, but in the handful of times, 10, 15 snaps, drop back passing, the offensive line held up, I thought, really well. The stunt pickup was great. I thought Fautanu played an excellent game. He's working and coordinating with Mason McCormick really well. There's some great clips out there. So I'm really excited and encouraged by where this young group, which we knew was so vital to not just the 2025 team, but beyond. Could you assemble a group to be the guys for the next, hopefully, 5+ years with Frazier and McCormick and Fautanu and Broderick Jones? And I think Pittsburgh is finally going in that direction after a pretty uneven to uninspiring start to the season.
All right, I just don't look. I think you give them kudos. I think Fautanu's playing well. I think they're doing a great job of hiding Broderick Jones for the most part, although he did have some good one-on-one reps in this game. I just don't want to see this offense get in a situation where Aaron Rodgers has to hold the ball longer, because make no mistake, this offense is built for this ball to come out, and it is hard to judge overall an offensive line that only 5 times a game, are they 6 times a game, are they having to block more than 2.5 seconds?
But if you want those big plays, Rodgers is probably going to have to hold on to the ball longer because generally to get some of those big plays, you're going to have to let routes develop. I know Pittsburgh's been using the quick passing game and yak, but if you really want the number to boost, you're going to have to get some more downfield throws. So which is it? Do you want Rodgers to hold on to the ball more for the big plays, or do you want the snap to throw times to consistently be low like they currently are?
Well, I mean, it goes back to I'd like to see more explosive plays too, and more times than not, if you're not getting it out off of yak, you've got to be able to push the football down the field longer. And in order to do that, you're right. You have to have routes develop. You have to have the quarterback hold on to the football a little bit longer.
So, do you want the snap to throw times to be longer? Is that kind of what you're hoping for in the pursuit of the more explosive play?
Whatever it takes. I'm not going to sit here and just say merely holding the football longer is going to produce more explosive plays.
What is more important, like, the ball
The-
getting out quick or the big plays? Like protecting Rodgers or getting those big plays? Like if you had,
Well, yeah, look,
what is the hierarchy of?
what was one of my main concerns about Aaron Rodgers joining this team? He can't take the type of hits that he took that we saw him with the Jets last year, right? And the remedy for that is what? Just don't have him hold on to the football. The shorter amount of time that he holds on to the football. And look, this all goes back to stemming off of your running game. The more times that you're possessing the football and not getting into second and long or third and long situations, the more the ability you have to run your offense and keep opposing defenses off, more on your schedule, where these short, quick throws can. 3rd and 4 is a lot easier to pick up with a short pass than it is 3rd and 8, right?
Yeah, as the Packers game showed.
This offense is so predicated on getting the ball out quick and surviving off the running game. They're going to have to continue to do that, or else you're going to run into situations where Aaron Rodgers absolutely has to hold on to the football longer, and then that's not going to produce greater results more times than not, I don't think.
Yeah, I just like how this offense is constructed and rolling. It's pretty atypical of what a lot of other offenses are doing, but it's working in Pittsburgh. Maybe just I'm so starved for offensive play and points that we haven't seen in quite some time.
This is a rich cracker right now.
Yes, it is.
Compared to the Great Value Walmart brand.
Right. There goes our sponsorship for Great Value Walmart brands. By the way, we're sorry about that. No, I mean, listen, I would love.
I do buy a lot of Great Value stuff though at Walmart. So
you're trying to save the sponsorship. I appreciate the efforts. I would love explosive plays too, and obviously there's always trade-offs and yin and yang, and you can still hit big plays. The Metcalf 80-yard touchdown, the ball came out pretty quick on that play. I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes into this thing, but I like the offense. I think when Rodgers gets to operate from a clean pocket, he's playing his best football. That's true of any quarterback, but especially a 41, soon to be 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. So I think the line's giving him some time when he needs to. Then the offense is otherwise scheming things up to get the ball out quickly and get some yak.
All right. I just want to see the run game go back the other direction the way it was for a stretch of games there. And if they're able to do that and they stay out of the negativity and don't turn the football over, obviously, so on short field sometimes too, and we talked about this as well too. I will sacrifice plays run and time for possession for 60-yard gains and 80-yard touchdowns too. But
sure.
But overall, you would like to see this offense be able to possess the football longer or more plays throughout the nature of a game.
Right, because your defense is taking on a lot of snaps. They're almost 70 per game, which is just too much for how veteran this group is. You're worried about where that group is going to be late in the season if this trend continues. I like the mentality of the group, though. These guys are finishing blocks. They're running their feet. I had a clip of DK Metcalf and Broderick Jones introducing Colts defenders to Pittsburgh sideline on the one play. Darnell Washington with more pancakes out there. I like the mentality of this group. I thought DK Metcalf had some bad drops in this one, but had some good releases. He's had some plays where he's gotten a step on a guy off the line, and Rodgers hasn't seen him. So maybe you do want to have some points of emphasis of saying you got press coverage. Metcalf's winning off the line. There's been some chances to throw to him. The ball's gone elsewhere. So maybe something to go back through in film study. I thought Calvin Austin had a good game. The arrow route that he took for 18, 19 yards was really important to break that first tackle. Kenny Moore, a really good defender. He had that catch on 3rd and 10 that ended up being an inch short. They got it on the tush push, but that was a tough catch over the middle. I think a touchdown if Rodgers has that ball a bit better, a little more in stride for Austin. I think Austin's one reason why Pittsburgh did not make a move at the deadline to go get a Jacoby Myers or Shaheed or somebody else. He's played, I think, really well this season.
Yeah, we noted the other day, Darnell Washington made some really key catches, tough catches in this game, and I thought Kenneth Gainwell helped you out space in the passing game as well too. Plus, one of those times he drew a 15-yard face mask as well. So, those, there's a lot there. You got good performances outside of your top. Obviously, DK Metcalf didn't have a lot of catches or yardage in this game, but you did get the contributions from key contributions and key points of the game from Freiermuth, obviously on the touchdown, from Darnell Washington on 2 back-to-back plays, and I think one other one, and then as you highlighted there, Calvin Austin, a couple of key plays in this game. Got to have it type plays too.
Definitely big time moments there and moving the sticks, and that was important in this game. All right, Dave, let's flip over to the defense. I already talked about it some, a lot of attention here. I think what again still gets lost a little bit under the umbrella of 6 takeaways and the splash plays and Duggar and Ramsey is what I talked about, what Mike Tomlin again opened his presser with. You stopped the run. And that's the big thing. You had to stop the run against the Colts. And I know I said last week, or last show that it doesn't guarantee success defensively because you saw the Packers game, you stopped the run and you still had a tough time. But if you don't stop the run against the Colts, you were guaranteed to fail. Didn't guarantee success, but it guaranteed failure if you didn't stop the run. And they did. It was really strong team run defense. Cam Hayward played a whale of a game. I thought this was Keanu Benton's best game of the season, even better than the Minnesota game, and doing so against a much better offensive line. He kind of beat up on a pretty injured Vikings game back in week 4. He beat Bortolini. He beat Gonclaves. He was really doing a great job getting pressures and beating blocks, and the sack that he had obviously was really important. So, they rallied, they ran to the ball, they were gap sound. I mean, that was pretty clinic type stuff.
Yeah, paramount, and that's why Mike Tomlin opened up his press conference yesterday about re-emphasizing that stopping a good running offense with Jonathan Taylor had a lot to do with the complexion of the game there. So absolutely, I thought they were very, very sound. I thought the outside linebackers played well against the run. Highsmith and Watt and Herbig coming off the edge, and then obviously the inside linebackers were very impactful as well too.
Like Jonathan Taylor was never able to get a full head of steam. He was never vertical. He was always having to dance and get lateral and bounce. When you have a back of that caliber that's not able to get up to speed, and he's got to be able to kind of stop and start and try to find the hole and try to jump cut his way through or bounce a run down a gap. When you're getting him to be slow in the backfield where he's got to take time to try to figure it out rather than a clean read and cut where he can put his foot in the ground and accelerate, man, you've won that battle in a big way. You can't let that guy get going, get to the second level. You're in big trouble if he's doing that with a full head of steam. He just never got
He had
going.
no runways for him. And that's when you
Huge.
talk about a guy like Derrick Henry as well, too. You usually talk about you got to make him stomp his feet, move his feet a little bit. If you give Derrick Henry a runway, that thing could end up 60 or 70 yards down the field. And Jonathan Taylor is the same type of back. You give him a good runway, a good lane where he's getting ahead of speed. Where most of his yards seemed to come in this game was either a missed tackle right near at the line of scrimmage or a broken tackle, 3 yards past the line of scrimmage there. But for the most part, you had arms and hands on him, and there weren't a lot of clear runways for him.
Remember reading, and I'm trying to remember back, so I might be getting this a little incorrect. Remember reading an article on Tim Lincecum, the Giants multi-time, really great pitcher, and I think it was his dad or his coach that said I could watch Lincecum's feet and know exactly what kind of game he was having just by the technique of his base. And I think about if you just watch Jonathan Taylor's feet in this game, all the stop, start, and cut, and the backfield action of him having to bounce those runs, you could watch nothing from the defense. You could just watch his feet, and you would know that he was struggling and not finding that running room. So Pittsburgh, I thought, did a great job up front.
And that's a good offensive line that the Colts have.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the better in the NFL. It was a healthy group, too. I mean, they got good tackles. They got Quentin Nelson. Man, I don't think you get too many of those great one-on-one O-line, D-line matchups anymore. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing, but I don't think you get kind of the matchups of yesteryear, the Marshall Yondas of the world going against, Pittsburgh's defensive line. But Cam Hayward and Quentin Nelson's one of those great battles for the ages. And Hayward just seems to bring a little extra juice when he faces that guy. He brings a little extra power, a little chip on his shoulder in his game. And, Nelson won some battles, but I thought Hayward won the day.
It seems like players have their kryptonite of other players sometimes. I think thinking back when you talk about that kind of matchup to Geno Atkins versus like David DeCastro, right?
Oh, yeah. And Pouncey even had his trouble. Yeah, Atkins
Right.
was a great player.
Everybody was good until, or you had certain offensive linemen that were good until they played this person. Now, Geno Atkins obviously was a solid defender, but when you talk about good one-on-one matchups, it always seemed like Geno Atkins was the kryptonite to Pouncey and DeCastro and Cam Hayward. For whatever reason, seems to be the Quentin Nelson kryptonite.
Yeah, I mean, there was that one early rush where I think Nelson's expecting bull and Hayward swims him and beats him clean. So, yeah, they're not in division. Usually those battles are more interdivision. You're facing somebody twice a year, but Pittsburgh has played the Colts, 3 years running, and they've had battles in the past too. So it's become an annual matchup. So I thought Hayward, I had a film room on him, just the embodiment, not even just the run defense or the production, but, getting his hands up, he's swatting passes, no defensive linemen since 2020 has had more pass deflections than Cam Hayward in the NFL. The effort, the one catch along the left sideline, I think that the Pittman where Wilson missed a tackle and Ramsey was a little awkward angled and Hayward's running that down and makes a tackle. Then you watch Derek Harmon later in that game, as you pointed out Monday, making a tackle on a pass, 10 yards downfield. It's really infectious. Harmon's getting his hands up and throwing lanes. So I watch Harmon and I'm sure it's innate to him. He was doing this kind of stuff in Oregon in college, but I'm seeing Hayward's attitude and mentality rub off on young guys like Derek Harmon, and that's really heartening to see.
Absolutely, and you're seeing that physicality out of Harmon, the active hands and the long arms and the push and all. So, and look, Bortolini, we talked about him ahead of this game. That he's not a household name by any stretch of imagination, but this is a guy that's been impressive, at least in the tape study that I did leading up to this game. So, Keanu Benton won a lot of the one-on-one matchups with him, and that played a big part in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Benton was excellent. He was so good. Can he find that consistency? The talent's never been a question with Keanu Benton. He's always had all the tools and all the ability. It's been just a little up and down, a little high and low, but hopefully this can be the sign of things to come. 3.5 sacks this season. Dude had 1 in each of his first 2 years, so that alone is impressive and clear, tangible improvement, but just wanting that consistency to continue. But I think we're starting to see signs of that.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I think over the last couple of years since drafting, I thought, hey, this guy could be a 5-sack guy, especially when you go back to his rookie season and the ones that he didn't finish and all. So I think he's still got another sack and a half in him. I think some of the most impressive things were him not getting turned or rooted out against some of these runs so that other players could make some plays in that. Even though he didn't show up on the box score on a couple of these run stops and all, I thought overall he did a great job of not ending up on the ground or getting turned out of holes or pushed back.
Yeah, there was one. He got doubled, and he took it on like a champ. I mean, he kind of turned to make himself skinny. I don't know. Some teams teach you to turn and get sideways and kind of collapse yourself so that you can't kind of get pushed. And some teams tell you to stay square. I don't know exactly how Pittsburgh teaches it. Maybe there's a combination depending on the situation or the matchup. But yeah, I think it's a great point.
And look, this is a Charger. I don't want to look too far ahead, but this Chargers offensive line is beat up, and it's definitely not as good of an offensive line as the Colts. So expecting more of the same, expecting that consistency for him and the rest of those guys up front to continue Sunday night.
Yeah, in terms of the trade deadline and its impact on Pittsburgh, the one move that was made yesterday that will affect him is the Chargers traded for Trevor Penning from the Saints. We'll see exactly what his role is, if anything, trying to catch that moving train, but the Chargers need offensive line help. I know he's been playing some more guard than tackle, and the Chargers need tackle help, so we'll see. But that's one thing to note in terms of this matchup.
All right.
All right, Dave.
Coverage.
Yeah,
As far as
coverage. Good.
as far as coverage goes, the big talk obviously was the split safety usage and how effective overall they were within that. I've got them down for running cover 2 8 times, cover 1 12 times, cover 3 8 times, cover 4 13 times, cover 6 10 times in this. So a lot of split safety work in this. I think the thing that really stood out the most, and I went back through the All-22 on defense again this morning, was in sort of the cover 1 type man situations. I thought they were really really sticky in this one, and I think that played a part in making Daniel Jones hold the ball a little bit longer, and maybe and coming off some of those first reads more times than not. So even though there's a lot of talk about the split safety work in this game, and I thought it was excellent, I thought generally in cover 1 man type situations that the underneath guys were doing a really good job of being sticky.
I agree. I think you're right. On third down, Pittsburgh played more man coverage than I thought. And you talked about Jalen Ramsey going on Tyler Moore to take him away, but the other guys did their job too. So the two high shells get talked about a lot. We wrote about that as one smart adjustment Pittsburgh made, but on third down, Pittsburgh still played a good deal of man coverage. Do we have the exact numbers on third down of what coverages Pittsburgh ran? Do we have that charted or noted somewhere?
I could probably pull them if you give me enough time here.
If not, then maybe for a Friday show, you can tweet it out later. But, I know late in the game, obviously, Pittsburgh started playing some softer coverages. I'm looking at the coverage charts from this game. They don't look too dissimilar from Pittsburgh on the season. Still majority cover 3, some cover 1 in this game. But I do know, late in this game, Pittsburgh was playing some softer coverages and kind of letting the Colts throw underneath and just take some yards there to start bleeding the clock. So that end game stuff might be skewing the data a little bit.
All right, what do you want to know? Third down?
Yeah, on third down, what coverages did Pittsburgh play?
All right, cover 1, 5 dropbacks, and they allowed 3 completions for 29 yards in those situations there. Cover 2 on third down, 2 dropbacks, 1 completion for 6 yards. Cover 3 on third down, 1 drop back, 1 completion for 11 yards. Cover 4 on third down, none. Cover 6 on third down,
None.
3.
Oh, 3. Okay.
Three completions, 28 yards. That might have been, let's see when those were. 2 of them fourth quarter. One at 113 on the pass to A.D. Mitchell for 7 yards on a 3rd and 8. That was the one. Was that the one that set up the fourth down?
You said 113 in the fourth quarter?
113 in the first quarter.
Oh, in the first quarter. Then probably. That sounds right.
The 2 other ones were fourth quarter. 12:49 in the fourth on a 3rd and 11.
That A.D. Mitchell was the curl at the sticks where Pittsburgh rallied and tackled, then the fake punt happened the next play.
All right. And then fourth quarter, 3rd and 11 was the one to Josh Downs for 17 yards. That was the one where there was a gap in the coverage there, I believe, right? On the cover 6 there. And the other one came with 48 seconds left in the game to Josh Downs for 4 yards.
So is that all the coverages? Cover 6 was the last one to note there?
I guess we could get into goal line or red 2.
Third down. Yeah, let's leave goal line aside, especially coverage situations. So 5 of 11 third downs, you ran cover 1, so almost half the time in this game. And Pittsburgh, I thought, generally had success.
I agree.
Anything else here defensively? Duggar, I thought clean, smart, solid game. Ramsey was physical. I mean, he was throwing his weight around as he always does.
Boy, even on that batted interception by Peyton Wilson, if that ball gets completed, who was that on that side? Was that
That was Pittman.
Pittman? He got crushed.
He got crushed all day by Ramsey. The one over the middle, which was a penalty, probably a fine coming for Ramsey on that, but pretty heavy hit there. Pittman does not have fun playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's taking some licks. Casey
he
hit.
has. He has.
And even I think Ramsey had to hit on Tyler Warren on 3rd and 2 that set up that first 4th down that the Colts went for. I think even on one of the bats that Hayward had, Ramsey got a good piece. It might have been Pittman even, but got a piece of somebody. So I think Ramsey, there could be something there playing safety now.
Yeah, look, and it goes without saying, I think overall they tackled very well, and the yards after the catch was just like 88 or something like that, out of 300 something passing yards. So, and on 31 completions. So that's exactly where you need that number to be. So give you guys a chance to rally down and make the tackles and make them make some forward. Although you don't like to see a team go 5 for 5 or whatever it was on 4th down against you, at least you're putting them in this situations where you're making them make some decisions on 4th down.
Yeah, and the Colts are aggressive. That's their personality, and it showed throughout the game. Special teams was good, kick coverage good. I was happy with the job. Skoranek did us the PP, having to fill in their 3rd string, still making tackles. Eccles as a gunner, thought did a nice job. Keyshawn Williams get a little nervous with the spins and catches the ball kind of high on his shoulder on punt returns.
Over the back. Yeah, that one did have you a little concerned there.
Yeah.
Kind of over the shoulder, if you will. But he's been getting it done overall. No real negativity when it comes to that. I think punt return average isn't bad related to the rest of the league there. You brought up a good point the other day when we were talking about Ben Skoranek and personal protector and all like that. I'm fine with it overall, but what you do lose with it. Who was the other gunner in this game?
It was Eccles. Eccles and Pierre, the gunners.
Okay.
He did well.
Yeah, he did well, but you're a better punt coverage team.
Yeah.
With Skoranek out there.
Right. So if Peppers can come back, then he can return as the personal protector, the quarterback of the punt team, and then Skoranek can go back to gunner, especially now that Eccles is playing some more snaps, a lot more snaps defensively with Ramsey going to safety. Eccles is now basically your starting slot corner. I think Pittsburgh actually updated the depth chart, which they almost never do, to show Ramsey at safety and Eccles as your starting nickel, which kind of really confirms what Mike Tomlin said. This may be a pretty long-term solution and switch for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is probably the right call.
Right, and you get. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but you get a Chargers offense that you're going against, where you get a quarterback in Justin Herbert that gets hit a lot and holds on to the football longer than most, but he also does push the football down the field more times than not. Has a good intended air yard and completed air yard distance as well too. So and obviously they're not going to have. It doesn't sound like. Their rookie Omarion Hampton at running back for this game. Obviously, they lost Najee Harris. They're beat up on the offensive line as well. They do have phenomenal playmakers at the wide receiver position. So you're going to if Justin Herbert wants to hold on to that football, you got to make him pay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still talent. Vidal kind of reminds me of Jalen Warren, this squatty, kind of powerful runner type of a guy, chip on his shoulder.
Real physical guy, willing to, with the little tape that I've watched on him too, he will help you out blocking, when the ball doesn't go to him. Very, very physical, smaller type guy.
Right. And he's now kind of the lead back after the Hampton injury and Najee being out. Hassan Haskins, I think, is even on IR right now, but the skill guys are really good. McConkey, Keenan Allen coming back to the Chargers, and then Tomlin mentioned it too. Gadsden, the rookie tight end, that's a Jalen Ramsey matchup potentially waiting to happen there. He's really gotten involved in the offense. I watched just by happenstance a lot of Syracuse tape this year. I watched LaQuint Allen, and I think I watched some Kyle McCord. And so Gadsden was the guy that popped. I was going to do the report on him because I was like, this guy's balling out. And I think somebody else grabbed him first. But that's a pretty big height weight matchup there, kind of, as Tomlin said, the overstuffed wide receiver in a tight end role.
Kind of get some likely vibes from him, too, as far as in the passing game.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I got to watch more Chargers tape this week. But, he's a pass game threat. There's no question about that.
And down in the red zone too. He's really become a popular target for them.
Has he? But how many touchdowns does he have this year? He's got 2 in the last 3 games. I don't know where they came from, but yeah, certainly making an impact. All right, Dave. Any other thoughts watching the All-22 from this game?
No.
All right. Anything else? Any other late breaking news? Any other thoughts from yesterday's? What were your thoughts on those Jets Cowboys deals and the Colts deal as well? Kind of who won, who lost the deadline?
I mean, the Cowboys are definitely trying to go all in here. I don't know how much that helps them. They obviously up until this game against the Cardinals have an offense that can put points on the board, but they're having problems stopping. I mean, you let Jacoby Brissett, and apologies to you, you're a huge Jacoby Brissett fan. You saw in this game why you were a big Jacoby. I don't know how much of that game you saw, but
I did watch it. Yeah.
he got the ball where it needed to go in there, and defensively, you understand why the Cowboys did it. To go out and get who was the Bengals linebacker?
Logan Wilson.
Yeah, Logan Wilson. Then you bring a Quinnen Williams over there, and you make those moves that you did on the defensive side of football. You understand it. And look, this is just a classic that the Jets are trying to break this thing down and retool. So I think the big takeaway here is they've got a lot of early. They're going to be quarterback shopping. That's one big takeaway here. The Jets are. So that's one team the Steelers will have to compete against at a minimum. Talking about the Cardinals and going with Jacoby Brissett in the near future, you do have to wonder if quarterback's going to be on the first round table for them in 2026. The Raiders are definitely going to be quarterback shopping, it feels like, early in the draft. Who else is another team that I was looking at this?
The Browns, I assume, will do their annual pilgrimage for quarterback help. One team that's not the Colts, apparently. I think the first round picks tell you that Daniel Jones is going to be their guy. At least they're going to hope that he's going to be their guy.
Yeah, that seemed like they're going to be in the first round market there. Trying to think who else might be. Miami could potentially be in the first round quarterback market. So you've got Miami, Cleveland,
the Jets, the Raiders,
the Jets, the Raiders, maybe the Cardinals. So
potentially.
I mean, you got a lot of teams there potentially hunting for quarterbacks in the draft.
That's true every year. Every year there's a half dozen teams looking for quarterback help. You know who has the lowest interception rate in NFL history? Want to take a guess? Jacoby Brissett. Believe it or not. He just gets on the qualifying side of things. Obviously, he's not played a ton of football. Aaron Rodgers, number 2. I've been kind of monitoring, could Rodgers ever surpass him, but Brissett's playing clean, and Rodgers has played pretty clean too, but we'll see if that switch ever happens. But Jacoby Brissett, not a name you would guess as the least intercepted quarterback in NFL history on a percentage basis. Yeah, I think the Jets made the right play. I mean, listen, they're not winning with those guys, and so it's always tough to trade those cornerstone pieces, and you just gave Sauce Gardner that contract extension, which kind of tells you contracts can be very fungible, to use your word, Dave. But you got to reset here, try something different, and if you're going to sell big, they should have even sold off more. They should have traded Breece Hall. They should have made more moves even than which they did. The Cowboys, I don't know. I mean, I get there's a longer-term play. It's not just the rentals for a guy like Quinnen Williams, but I just don't think it's going to work. I just think they're always kind of short-sighted and always missing the boat and always making that one wrong move. The Colts, it's probably an overpay for Sauce. They're going to hope he kind of returns to where he was a couple years ago, but I do appreciate the mentality. Let's go all in and try to win right now. This is our window, so I can appreciate the aggression.
What about the Seahawks acquiring
Shaheed? I don't know as much their situation, but you got Kupp. I mean, Smith and Jigba. I don't feel as bad about giving up all those plays to Smith and Jigba anymore because he's been torching every team. I mean, they see the best receiver in the NFL right now. I mean, he raised right up there with Chase and Jefferson. So yeah, I mean, it helps. I mean, Seattle's a contender. You go watch them blow the doors off of Washington. I don't see a lot of weaknesses in that Seahawks team.
Right. Now, offensively, boy, Darnold is obviously on a tear. Horton, what a find that kid is at wide receiver. And look, they're strong on offense. If their defense can hold up, they are going to be around making a run here in this thing.
All right, Dave, let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's try to fly through some here. Joe Fazino writes in, happy Monday, Dave and Alex. Easy question for you here. Was this Peyton Wilson's best game of his young career? From my perspective, tackling looked solid, and obviously the splash was there. I thought he had a really nice game last week. But was overshadowed by all the negative stuff, of which there was a lot. Nice to see him looking like we had expected him to. Did anyone in this game have quietly performance from your eye that won't get talked about? I think Keanu Benton, who we talked about, was one of the guys that I think will probably get a little bit overshadowed as far as the quality of the game. I think Fautano had a very good game for what he was asked to do in this one. I think Queen played well.
Yeah, had a good breakup on that jump ball to O'Reilly Cox.
Right. I Cam Hayward, as we talked about. I mean, there's several of the guys on the defensive side of football had a really good game. We talked about Calvin Austin. I think Kenneth Gainwell, his game kind of went under the radar there. But back to Peyton Wilson. It was a very good game by Peyton Wilson. It was.
Yeah, was it the best? I'm trying to think back. The Baltimore game last year with the interception that he had on that wheel route to Justice Hill. I'm trying to think about how he played otherwise in that game. That was, I think, a pretty strong showing. But no matter exactly where you want to rank it, number one or just about, it was a really good game. So, yeah, something to build on.
His final comment, Kyle Duggar seemed to hop on this moving train pretty well, huh? Yeah, I mean, at first blush, once again, it wasn't that he was all that impactful as far as playmaking. He just he didn't there was nothing egregious from his play overall.
Which is all that you wanted. You just wanted him to come in and play a solid game on a short week, absorb the defense, and kudos to him for that. So really happy with the job he did.
All right, Alexander Campbell writes in, Jonnu Smith is the team's number 2 leader in targets, but his yards per reception is among the lowest on the team. He currently has the lowest yards per reception of his career, while also having the lowest yards after the catch per reception of his career and the second lowest ADOT. Do you think the Steelers are using him correctly? Should he be more of a downfield threat? Should they get him the ball on the move more? How can they make better use of his talent and explosiveness? Look, when you got this goes back to Aaron Rodgers and getting the ball out quick. He could have helped his own cause by making that first catch of the game. I'll tell you that. He could have helped all those stats, the yards per reception, the ADOT, the yards after the catch. Sometimes the players got to help you out sometimes, and he certainly did on that first play there. Would you like to see him used more down the field, down the seam, specifically and all? Yes, but I wouldn't expect a dramatic shift in this overall.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say to use all these tight ends a little more downfield. I think Pittsburgh's doing a little bit more of that than they did the start of the season. And you're right, that drop by Jonnu Smith cannot be forgotten. His ADOT was once about 0.4. It's now 3.7, so it is ascending. So I think we're kind of seeing that shift a little bit. And you knew the 0.4 was not going to hold over the entire season. That number's going to normalize to some degree, but it's still down from his career average. So yeah, I think probably you want to use his playmaking talents a little more than Pittsburgh has. But again, the offense is working. These things will, I think, water will find its level, and we're already kind of seeing Smith's numbers increase from where it was at the start of the season.
Let's see here. Let's go to Todd Jitzler. What changed? I just have to ask what changed for the defense. Peyton Wilson said we just simplified things and pinned our ears back. So was it schematic, simplifying the game plan execution, moving Ramsey to safety, having the Super Bowl XL alumni present, whatever it was, seemed to work. I mean, what changed? I mean, you stop and run the way that you did in Jonathan Taylor, and not giving Jonathan Taylor those runways and not giving up a lot of yards on 1st and 10 situations certainly set the tone for everything. Jalen Ramsey moving to safety was significant. It did seem a lot simpler, there wasn't as much. We talked a lot about rotations and being static and all. They did seem a little more static, but they played smartly. People were in the right positions. They had awareness on some of these zone matches. type situations. They rallied to football. They did not give up over 100 yards after the catch. And then you had your playmakers make plays. T.J. Watt, quick time to strip sack. Alex Highsmith, quick win on his sack. Peyton Wilson, they blitzed less, but they, for the most part, were good when they did blitz. And then once again, go back to stop and run. So was it simplified more, and did these adjustments of moving people around help? Yeah, but it make no mistake, it all started with stop and run, and everything kind of flowered out from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. We talked about this defense needing to be more multiple and needing to be more creative, and in some ways, a little simplicity didn't hurt. I think it was kind of the mother of necessity because you had the issues at safety with Ramsey playing there full time and Duggar coming in on a really short week to play all but one snap. Now your front did some really inventive stuff. You got to play your three outside linebacker package more. You got Hayward to stand up. You got to kind of get into your bag with your stunts and all your twists and a couple of nickel blitzes that were effective. The Echoes pressure that forced the incompletion on the Highsmith breakup. So your front got to be, I think, creative because of the game circumstance. Your defense, your back end was a little more static, but it all worked out.
All right, this one's from Brian Tellini. It's a bit outdated, a bit irrelevant, but we'll address it none the same. David and Alex, skip this if you already talked about it, but Deebo Samuel would be an interesting ad for this team if they went after a playmaker. He says, I think this makes a lot more sense than a lot of other names I have heard and shouldn't cost a ton based on his contract. Now, he sent this at 8:22 Monday, so he probably had not listened to the Monday show because it probably wasn't out until there. I brought up the aspect of not saying, just saying that if the team, wanted a lower draft, a guy that the Steelers could trade for at the wide receiver position, it probably wouldn't have cost an arm and a leg. That would be under the radar. Would be Deebo Samuel. Now, I know a lot of pushback in there. That guy wouldn't have moved the needle. No, I think if they would have. I would have been intrigued had they traded like a 6th for a 5th and then Deebo Samuel, or a 7th for a 6th, or whatever at the end, end swap that you want to do, as long as it did not entail a 4th being involved in this at all. I do think it would have been an interesting ad because because of the salary that he made, because of the type of player that he is, and because of being able to be utilized more in a shorter passing game and the yards after the catch. I would have been intrigued to see how it would have worked out had they done some sort of deal for Deebo Samuel. Now, once again, am I talking about something that moves the needle significantly? No. Is he a guy that you're going to get out there for 40, 50 plays a game? No, but I think he could have been utilized in the style of offense that they run for 8, 10, 12 plays, and they wouldn't have had to give up a lot for him, assuming he was even a guy that you could have traded for.
Yeah, I get that. And to your credit, there were a couple rumors that he could be traded. I know there was a report, I think, of a Buffalo beat guy that said, watch out, Debo going to the Bills. So I thought the Bills would be landing a receiver. Like, they needed receiver help, and they did not get one of those guys. And so that's probably something Bills fans are upset about today. I think the Commanders were kind of just so shell-shocked from the night before of, okay, we go beat Seattle in prime time at home. We win that game. We're back in this NFC East race. We're getting Jaden Daniels back too. Daniels is now done essentially for this season. Maybe not. Maybe he could come back late in the year, but the season's going to be over, so why bother to? Now we're sellers. We got blown out at home. It's just kind of a lot going on there in a 24-hour span before the deadline. So again, I was not crazy about the idea of Deebo. I do get the thought and the fit. Just to ask point blank, Pittsburgh making 0 trades yesterday. You good with that? You bad with that? What is your feeling?
Yeah, once again, I'm not surprised by it. No, and no.
What is your feeling? What is your, in terms of, like, was that the right move? Because I'm sure if they wanted to, they could have gotten Jacoby Myers, they could have gotten Shaheed, they could have landed some asset, Lazard, whoever.
I don't think any wide receiver that this team would have added would have provided the punch that a lot of people think that it would have. So I am fine with them not trading for a wide receiver.
Should they have swung for a Jalen Waddle, a Chris Olave?
No.
Why not? Why not?
Just not. I don't think you would get the get the punch for the pay.
Because of the way this offense is built?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, that would be you'd be focusing on getting that guy the ball more. That is your needle mover. I just can't give up a first-round pick. I think you can certainly justify. I think Arthur Smith could make it work in the offense. You probably have to change your offense a little bit to make sure that you're getting your ROI on a Jalen Waddle. But I can't give up a first-round pick when I know I might need that for a quarterback next year.
Right, exactly. All
All
right,
right, anything else?
Charlie writes in, "Hey guys, it's early, but perhaps Ramsey stays or plays mostly at free safety and Elliott at strong safety when he gets back. Peppers, Duggar, and others as strong backup rotation pieces? Question mark. Maybe 2026 and beyond. Line up a cornerback early in the draft. React to me," he says in all capitals. Look, Ramsey certainly did not hurt this team, moving. It's going to be interesting, and as you pointed out, when they and maybe even starting this week again, we saw the benefits against Warren and the Colts, and how Ramsey was able to be over the top of that in coverage. What's going to happen when they face Likely and Andrews, and maybe even this week with Gadsden.
Laporta late in the
Right.
season, Kincaid in Buffalo. You're
Right.
facing some good tight ends down the stretch.
Right. Now, will this team get Elliott back? We can only hope, and if that happens, should we continue to see Ramsey at free safety and Elliott strong? I don't think, I don't think you'll be hurt by that as long as everybody else stays healthy within this. So, yeah, I'm for that from where we sit now. It would be great to get Elliott back, maybe for that game against the Ravens.
Yeah, we just don't know. We'll have to wait
Yeah.
and see. The reporting was from the media has been pretty pessimistic that he may not come back at all this season. I'm thinking maybe playoffs could he come back for? I just don't know. He's out, the next 3 games, and we'll go from there. But I'll be happy if he gets back. I just don't know if and when that's going to occur.
Chris Lookhart writes in, "Good morning, fellows. 2 questions for you. I think if Rodgers plays well the rest of the season and wants to come back, the Steelers would absolutely say yes. How much do you think he would ask for? 10, 15 million, or is this a one-time thing?" Second question is, and I've always hoped we would find a guy like him, but can you see Peyton Wilson beginning to turn into a Shazier type? Shea was my favorite current Steeler before he got hurt. I've always wanted another guy like him. Thanks for what you do. Christian from Zeeland, Michigan. All right, we'll start with Rodgers. I mean, look, Alex and I's take on this has been fairly consistent from where we sit right now. And if this team gets into the playoffs, and if Rodgers thinks there's something to build on, this team wins a playoff game or 2, and he still wants to play, I think the Steelers would absolutely be willing to bring him back. As far as the pay goes, I think he is what he is at this point of his career with the style of play and the style of offense that he fits in. Due to inflation and all like that, I maybe the top end's around 15 million. I wouldn't imagine to be much more than that. Assuming he just goes absolutely bonkers and starts stretching the field and all like that. But I think around 15 million, at least from where we sit right now, off the cuff, on the spot, sounds about right
I'm sorry, I got distracted. For who?
for Rodgers.
For Rodgers? Yeah, I mean, what did he get? I mean, I see him being sentiment based again. So there's kind of going to be a base salary and then an up to salary is probably the way this thing would get looked at, but probably a similar structure to where it was this year.
Yeah, and probably with inflation, all around 15 million on a low end, right? If you're able to get you in the playoffs and win a couple of games.
Yeah, his price tag might go up from there. Kind of want this guy back. And again, I think the NFL at large may have some interest in Rodgers after this season, especially if all those things take place. On Peyton Wilson and is he Shazier? We'll see. I think Shazier was really playing an elite level before he had that career-ending spinal injury. We'll get a ways to go on Wilson. I want to see Wilson make some more plays in man coverage, where Shazier was capable of doing. But yeah, I mean, he's got the skills. He's got the ability to be a good coverage linebacker. I think it's so hard to be a good coverage linebacker. There's like 3 of them in the NFL, and one of them is hurt in Fred Warner. So it's a tough job to do, but he's got a chance.
I think, Shazier was so athletic in when he was on the top of his game, there was a lot of times where he would just knife through and make those plays in the backfield. That's one thing that we really don't see from Peyton Wilson is the plays in the backfield, right?
Yeah,
So,
Shazier was a really high IQ
mhm.
kind of a guy.
And I think Wilson is a high IQ as well too. I just don't think his game is. I don't think the bright spot of his game is plays knifing through and making plays in the backfield. He can do it and has done.
Well, yeah, but I guess the question is
I
why
just
the
think
difference?
his read and react and see to do just isn't what Shazier was an elite athlete.
Yeah, but Wilson, I think, is a remarkable athlete, especially
Right.
for his build. I mean,
I
Shazier's more
just don't
athletic.
think that's his game. I just don't think that's Wilson's top end of his game.
Yeah, I don't want to disparage Wilson. He's a smart guy. He's worked super, super hard, but I don't know if he trusts his instincts the way that he needs to and the way that Shazier learned to do. And I think once Wilson trusts what he sees a bit more, he'll be a much better player and make some of those flash plays.
And Shazier was a little bit more of a gambler as well too, because he knew his athleticism. He could go under
Right.
instead of over.
Right. He's a little smaller in terms of a little shorter and he was a little more bendy because he wasn't so tall and kind of lanky the way that Wilson is. I mean, Wilson's put on weight, but body type was different. Shazier could kind of was the old Von Miller. You could bend under a coffee table like that was Shazier. You could kind of dip under some of those blocks a little more effectively than what I think Wilson is able to do, and that made him a little more effective, kind of getting through linemen and knifing into the backfield.
All right, we'll end this one with we still got a bunch in here. Britton writes in, "Hey David Knox, now that the trade deadline is come and gone, I was wondering if we could get a mid-season, off-season report. What is our current cap situation? Who are the players you both see leaving after the season ends? Thanks and keep up the great work. Best Steelers podcast by Britton. I appreciate and respect the question, and nobody likes to talk about cap and what things might potentially look for. They're in a great cap situation right now as far as potential rollover amount. Obviously, they spent a lot of cash this year. I would imagine that they're probably not going to be the percentage of cash versus cap that they were this year. Next off season, I mean, we could obviously roll down through the free agents. The guys that are set to be free agents, but obviously this list is even going to probably shift a little bit here. Look, I mean, your big question, obviously, what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? You've got Kyle Duggar on this team now. His contract voids. What's going to happen with here? I imagine this will be a one and done for Darius Slay. Isaac Seumalo, more than likely, this is his final year. What's going to happen with Miles Killebrew coming off of that injury and being a little bit longer in the tooth? Juan Thornhill, I imagine, be a one and done guy. Daniel Aquale, probably a one and done guy. Lowry, probably no need to re-sign him. Cole Holcomb, unless it's a minimum contract, probably not back. Kenneth
You don't
Gainwell,
think Holcomb comes back on more than minimum?
probably not.
Okay.
I see it as a veteran benefit contract. Kenneth Gainwell, probably a veteran benefit guy. Isaiah Loudermilk, only way he comes back is a veteran benefit guy. Chuck Clark probably gone. Andres Pete, uh, you know, uh, 33, 34 years old. Does it really matter what happens there? Scotty Miller, uh, another minimum value guy. Jabril Peppers might be one and done. Max Sharping probably has played his last down. Donald Parham's on IR. Probably never going to see him in a Steelers uniform. James Pierre, you know, another guy that does it. You like to have him for special teams, but
I think he's veteran benefit guy.
yeah, veteran benefit. Skylar Thompson probably done. DeMarvin Leal probably done. Corliss Waitman would like to see potentially like to see him signed. Calvin Austin III, that's going to be a big question mark about what happens with him. Ryan McCollum is a restricted. I should say Corliss Waitman's a restricted free agent, so you just be able.
Oh,
to,
is he? Oh,
yeah.
nice.
You should just be able to tender him. Might have to give him a second round tender to keep him instead of a original round guy. But I can see Corliss Waitman coming back on a tender.
Oh, yeah.
Calvin Austin be unrestricted. That'll be a big question mark. Ryan McCollum, I don't think it really matters what happens to him. You would like to probably would like a better option at backup center somehow, some way. Otomewo, probably a one and done player. Connor Hayward, this might be it for Connor Hayward unless he comes back on a minimum value contract. And then Jacob Slade, I believe, is on IR. Probably he's an exclusive rights free agent, though. So,
So who's your big free agents? Rodgers, Austin are kind of the two. Did I miss a name in there?
Killebrew, and now that Duggar's on the team, how much do you lean on him, and what happens there?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, but Elliott's going to be back, and so it might be Ramsey and Elliott for 2026. I mean, obviously, there's a couple. There's Hayward and some other names you mentioned, but in terms of like decent money that are going to be clearly above minimum contracts, it's Rodgers, it's Austin, and maybe Duggar, but who knows?
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting this offseason.
I mean, cap situation, this team should be fine,
The big offseason question will be who gets extensions. Do you pick up the 5th-year option on Broderick Jones, which won't impact 2026 cap, but Benton, Washington, Porter, who gets contracts, who doesn't, Boswell's deal, those will kind of be the offseason storylines.
Right, agreed. So there's a loose 30,000-foot look at the offseason here.
All right, Dave. Is that it?
All right, that's it. We will get back after it on Friday. We're still efforting a Chargers beat writer, so hopefully that comes through for us. We will talk about what the coordinators have to say on Thursday during the Friday show. Obviously, we'll go over where this team stands on the injury report situation and just kind of standard fare the rest of the week here. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, follow the directions, get yourself a username and password, hit the login button to use that username and password to take advantage of the ad-free version of the site. So, great job, Alex. I had fun today. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.